This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Today we're going to paint something weird, something unusual. Candy. Wait, really? Okay, not actual candy. It's transparent resin. Do not eat this stuff. But it does kind of look like candy, doesn't it? And we're going to paint it to look like candy as well. These are 3D printed miniatures from the brand new indie miniatures game, Snak 28. One of the coolest things about the current world of miniatures games is the sort of indie punk scene of DIY game makers. I'm talking free or mostly free games made by a single person or maybe a group of friends, games published as a zine or maybe even a single piece of photocopied paper that's passed around at conventions, games that encourage kit bashing or using whatever miniatures you want. I love these sorts of games, but I've always thought to myself, wouldn't it be cool if some of these weren't so grimy and grimdark? Wouldn't it be cool if some of them were kind of cute? And that's exactly what we're looking at today with Snak 28. It's played on a nice, compact 2x2 board. Each side has only 3 miniatures per player. The game is pay what you want over on itch.io, and the 3D printable miniatures for it are as well. But if, like me, you don't have a 3D printer, this game encourages kit bashing miniatures from other games into candy people as well. And speaking of kit bashing candy people, we're having a kit bashing contest for this game where I will be one of the judges, so stay tuned to the end of the video for the full details on that if you're interested. Anyway, this game was made by a friend of the channel, Fiverr, from Sugar Candy Miniatures, linked down in the description. And when they were showing me these sculpts and asking if I wanted to paint a few, I was saying, yes, of course, obviously these are amazing sculpts, but also wouldn't it be cool if we printed some of these in transparent resin to make them really look like hard candy? That way I could paint some of the parts while leaving other parts to be that raw candy looking plastic. And like I said, I don't have a 3D printer, so thank you so much to Fiverr's friend Elsie for printing these out for me. So first things first, here are the miniatures that I was sent in the mail. These things are so darn cute. I am in love with each and every one of these sculpts. These were sculpted by Mageworks, linked to their work down in the description, and designed by Fiverr. And I'm just in love with both of their styles. I feel like this is a great matchup between Fiverr's illustrative style and Mageworks sculpting. So good job to both of you. These miniatures are really some of my favorite sculpts I've seen in a while. You might notice that one of these miniatures is a lot bigger than the others. And that's because this one larger miniature represents a unique mechanic for the game, that being the candy monster. As during each game of Snak 28, you're not only fighting your opponents, but also you have to contend with the larger snack monster in the middle of the table who's trying to take everyone down. I think this is a really cool element to add to a game, especially if, like me, you prefer a more co-op or less competitive style of game. This game has been designed to be really beginner friendly and more accessible to people outside of the specifically miniature wargame space, and I think this aspect really helps with that. Of course, this is just one of the candy monsters. If you look into the full game rules, there's actually stats for 4 other candy monsters that you're encouraged to kit bash yourself, and each of the different monsters has their own unique mechanics to keep each game of Snak 28 different and interesting. The other unique element of this game that I really like is the redacted. Oh, I guess I can't say that on YouTube. Let's just call it eating the other models. This is one of the core aspects of the game, is that each of your models can eat the other models on the table because they're all made of food. And by doing this, by eating the other models, you can actually steal their powers. Let me explain. So when you build a character for this game, you pick your weapon, you pick your coating or shell type, like whether you have a hard shell or a soft shell kind of thing. but you also pick your secret ingredients. Every model in the game has a secret ingredient. It's sort of a unique special power that they have. The base game provides 20 of these special ingredients. You can roll on a d20 for each of your models to get a random one if you want, or you can pick the one you want. And while I won't spoil all the secret ingredients here, I will tell you about just a few to give you an idea of these cool abilities. Abilities like Cherry Bomb, which allows you to throw cherry bombs. Abilities like Bubblegum, which allow you to stick to other models, trapping them in melee combat with you. Or the so-called Baja Blast secret ingredient, which allows you to, quote, emit a beam of teal green soda. So yeah, I think this game looks great. I haven't played it yet, but I do want to try it soon once I've got 2 teams painted up. I really like how straightforward it is and how it appeals to people outside of the miniature wargaming space. I already have at least a few people in my life who don't usually play miniatures games who've said they're interested to play this game, so I think that says a lot. But anyway, that's enough about the game itself. Let's get to painting the actual models. I started out by sanding the models down a little bit to remove some of the layer lines from the 3D printing process. I glued these down to some of my standard issue flagstone bases, and then gave them a coat of gloss varnish with my airbrush. The idea here is that I just wanted to give them an even shinier look to look like hard candy, as well as getting rid of some of the scratchy look from the filing down process. Once this was done, I applied a black brush-on primer to all of the parts of the models that I wanted to be other colors aside from transparent red. I went with a black primer instead of a gray or white because I wanted to avoid the mistake I made on the last project I did on this channel, where I started with a white primer to try to get a more vibrant look, but I ended up just spending more time later on in the process trying to get those deep shadows back, and it was honestly a huge pain. I just want to start this one with a black primer, get those shadows established right up front, and not have to worry about them later. And I'll be honest, painting these models was a bit of a haphazard process. I didn't really know which parts of the model I wanted to remain cherry red or be other colors, so applying the black primer was a bit of a process of elimination sort of thing. Priming all of the parts of the models I definitely knew I didn't want to be red, and then slowly filling in the gaps as I went. As part of this process, I started applying a white primer over top of areas where I knew I wanted really bright colors to go, leaving the black primer in the recesses, and by doing this, I'm sort of visualizing the types of colors that might go there when I don't quite know the exact color yet. As I'm doing this and making progress with the primer, I'm thinking about which color is going to go where, what colors might complement it, and once I'm ready to make a statement, once I'm ready to nail something down, I'll start adding actual colors on top of the primer. But before we do that, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about this video's sponsor. This video is not sponsored by Snak 28. Fiverr is just my friend and I liked their game, so I wanted to make a video about it. The real sponsor of this video is, of course, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website and hosting platform that I have been using for just a little bit over a decade now for all of my website needs. And it's super easy to use. Just pick from one of their gorgeously designed pre-made templates and add in all the extra things you want using their extremely cool and easy to use drag and drop fluid engine. Or if you want, build something completely custom using their brand new feature, Squarespace Blueprint, which guides you through the process step by step of building a website from scratch, no coding or technical knowledge required. I've been using my current Squarespace website to host a gallery of my painted miniatures, all of my painting reference documents, as well as an online store which accepts a variety of flexible payment options and was extremely easy to set up. So if you need a website, why not check out squarespace.com today for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Dana Howell for 10% off your very first purchase. of a website or domain. The areas made of a waffle texture might have a base coat of warm brown, for instance, or some of these areas might be a bright pink. As I'm doing this, I'm using very thin coats of color so it's easy to paint over if I change my mind and want a different color there, but in most cases I end up sticking with the decisions that I've made because I've thought them out, I've visualized them ahead of time, and I've had time to think these decisions over while I'm priming. When applying especially bright colors like pink, I might stop during the process and apply highlights of pure white first to these areas before applying the coats of pink to get an even brighter version of that color. While with darker colors like brown, I might paint directly over the black undercoat with the brown color. In either case, applying these base colors is often the most lengthy part of the process. It involves the most decision making, the most time, and I would recommend, especially if you don't have a firm grasp on what colors are going to go where, I would recommend trying to focus your mind on this process as much as possible. In other words, when doing this, I try not to multitask. For a lot of other types of painting, a lot of different stages of painting, army painting, for example, assembly line painting, for example, I might be watching YouTube or television while I paint, as the steps can be quite monotonous and often don't require my full attention. But for a project like this, where each color that I'm applying is a specific and distinct decision on my parts, I always try to give it my full attention for best results, listening to some ambient music at the very most, no music with words in it, no audiobooks, and definitely no television while I'm doing this part of the process. Of course, all of our brains are unique and work differently, so this advice might not apply to all of you, but for me personally, I find that freeing up my mind as much as possible when doing this sort of painting really helps the process go faster and really helps me make less mistakes and go over things less times later on. Once the base coats on each model are done, it might then be time to add some highlights or shading. But before we do this, don't forget to paint the bases on your models, as your basing and even the rims of your base make up a part of the color scheme as well. So I almost always try to paint the bases of each model as part of the base coating process, as it's actually quite a large part of the color scheme for a lot of models. For these models, I went with that flagstone basing approach that I often do, but I didn't want these to look like stone flagstones. I wanted them to look like chocolate, or more specifically, mint chocolate chip. In order to achieve this effect, I applied a thick single coat of one of my favorite colors that I helped design for the Army Painter Speed Paint 2.0 range, pastel seafoam, to all of the bases. I applied this in a single thick coat on top of a plain white primer, hitting all of the areas of the bases, as well as any areas where I thought this color might reflect up onto the rest of the model. As you can see, once it's dry, it gives this really cool look where it makes it look like it's made of mint chip ice cream or a chocolate bar or something. But to really get that mint chip look, we of course need to add some dark chocolate chips. And for this, I am using Pro-Acryl Mahogany, which is a nice, rich, dark chocolate color with a bit of a reddish base for that extra warmth. I applied this in random patterns to look like chocolate chips, but I also used this color to paint the base rims, as I thought it was a nicer accent to the whole model versus a typical black base rim. On some of these little cobblestones, I painted just a few chips, while on others, I painted the entire block as a single chocolate chunk. And to be honest, I got very, very hungry for mint chocolate chip ice cream as I was painting these models, so be careful with that if you're replicating this process. And with our bases painted, with our base colors painted, it was then time to add some highlights and shading to the models, and here is how I mostly did that. For any of the warm colored areas, I used a purple speed paint to apply shadows. I like using purple for this as it gives a more vibrant shadow versus just using a darker version of the base color. And as we discovered when Brent visited last year and we did a whole bunch of shading experiments, purple is actually one of the most versatile shade colors, working really well with a variety of different base colors. I applied this to any of the crevices or areas where I thought shadows might gather on the models, and I specifically like using speed paint or other transparent paint brands for this versus a more opaque paint, as the transparent nature of these paints lets some of the color below show through, making it a more gradual shadow and making the blending process a little bit easier than if you were using strictly opaque paints. Once this was done, I went back to the base colors and did a little bit of cleanup in any areas where the shadows went too far. And after this, I applied some more gradual layered highlights to any areas I thought might need it, just mixing in lighter colors with each base color in gradual stages to provide whatever highlights I thought I needed for each color. While applying these colors, I noticed that this light coral color that I was using for highlights actually made a really nice shadow color for some of the white areas on the model where the purple shading just didn't quite look right to me. So I spent some time adding these coral shadows to any of the white areas, and I think it looks really good, really nice and creamy, much better than the purple shading in these areas. It's funny how one color's highest highlight can make a perfect shadow for another color. Colors are weird that way. Finally, I added a few edge highlighted details to these models to add things like chocolate sprinkles to really make these models look delicious. And that's about it. Of course, for each of these models, there was a slight variation on each of these techniques, but going through every single step for every single color I used, I think would make for quite a tedious, less entertaining video. So instead, if you have any questions about how I painted any of these models, what colors I used, what techniques I used, why not just leave those questions down in the comments and I can address them directly. And because you stayed all the way to the end of the video, it's now time to tell you about the Snak 28 kit bashing contest, where I'm going to be one of the judges, Taryn from Conjured Craft is going to be another one of the judges, and of course Fiverr, the creator of the game, will be the third judge. And here are the rules for this contest as well as the prizes. The basic rules are kit bash a food monster for use in Snak 28, something like the Cupcake Colossus perhaps, around that scale. You can make any sort of food monster you want and submit your entries by October 31st of this year, 2024, using the tag Snak28 Monster Makeoff. I think on Instagram, maybe on other social media. I'll leave the specific submission instructions down in the description. The prize for the winner of this contest will be a $25 gift certificate to Ramshackle Games, Ramshackle Miniatures. They're super cool. I really like them. As well as, of course, getting your monster made into a full illustration with rules for the Snak 28 game by Fiverr themselves. So pretty exciting, pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what people come up with. I'm probably going to do some kit bashing myself. Of course, I can't enter the contest myself, but I'm looking forward to doing some kit bashing for this game. If you have a small game like this that you want to get out there, if you have any interesting models you want to see me paint on the channel, I have a PO box now, so you can just send me things and they might show up on the channel. Yeah. And with that, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to all of our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/Dana Howell for your constant support so that I can make videos like this. And with that, I will see you in the next video.